All right, back to it. Like I said, if you've got stocks, bonds, if you've got gold or silver, if you've got crypto, it's all up today. And a lot of this has to do with the big, beautiful bill, the reconciliation bill that went through earlier this year. Join me now, Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform President. Grover, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Steve, good to be with you.
You know, one of the complaints I hear from Republicans, and maybe there's truth to this, is that there was so much in this bill, instead of doing it one at a time or a group at a time, that a lot of the benefits are lost on the American public, but they're starting to see it, aren't they?
They are. I mean, it made it easier to invest in creating jobs in the United States. It made it easier for people who work on tips. It helped people on Social Security. It reduced tax rates for every single taxpayer in the country. I mean, it's over and over and over again. One of the things that's going to happen as a result is that a lot of people are going to get a bigger refund than usual, because when they did no tax on tips, people aren't necessarily certain exactly how that was going to happen. They didn't perhaps start planning their taxes and so on, but they're going to find out that starting on January 19th of this year, okay, that's when all of these wonderful low tax efforts began. And so people are going to find they owe less taxes than I expected, and that's going to be quite a nice number. If you worked on taxes, tips rather, and there are no taxes on tips up to $25,000, this means that all the way back till next year, tips you got, January 20th of this year on through are deductible. That's true whether you're an independent contractor or an employee. It's true whether you file and take deductions or file with a standard deduction. You get that above the line. So it is a wonderful collection of lower taxes that are now permanent, by the way. The changes this year are permanent out into infinity. Unless the Democrats take over the country, you will be protected against those tax hikes.
Yeah, unless somebody comes in that wants more taxes, which one side of the aisle seems to like that a lot more than the other. The president this week, a couple of times here in Washington, suggesting the idea that that's just a nice start. He says income tax should become a thing of the past. What would that do to the economy?
Well, we didn't always have an income tax. Back at the turn of the century, we did not raise money from income taxes. We raised money from tariffs. We raised money from selling land. We could get back into the business of selling. A good chunk of the federal of everything west of the Mississippi is owned by the federal government and therefore not put to use. We don't use it effectively. We don't let people build houses on it, which is one of the problems in the West in particular, where it's difficult to get housing that's not terribly expensive. All of these things we could do to sell more land, to reduce the income tax. But the most important thing we can do to reduce the income tax is to reduce government spending. When we got the income tax, all this lovely money came in, and the politicians started thinking, well, it's our money now, let's spend it.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned all that land in the Western United States that's government, federal government land. That was never part of the Constitution. Every other state east of the Mississippi, when they became a state, they got the land. But not Wyoming, not Montana, not the Dakotas, not Utah, not Arizona. Why? What happened? Because that is a big deal.
It is, and I think it's clearly unconstitutional. The agreement when the states, we started 13 states, and then they realized, we're going to have more states than just 13. At first, they were thinking of just running North Carolina all the way across to the Pacific, and that'd be North Carolina. No. We're going to have many states, and the promise was all new states come in with the same rules as the first 13. They all get 2 senators, those sorts of things. And all the 13 states, what did they got? They got all the federal land to the state, and for the state to be able to distribute it to individuals or to sell it to individuals. When we got past the Mississippi, they stopped doing that. And then, of course, everything from North Carolina down to Texas was federal land, and they said, this is wrong. And then they gave it to those states, but they never made the fix for all of the big Western states with so much land.
That's right.
There are court cases coming on this. That may change.
Yeah, well, it should change in my estimation. There are obviously 2 different sides of that argument in the Western United States. I've got a lot of friends out west. Some want it to happen, some do not, and so it is. Let me ask you about a couple other things here. What about a $2,000 tariff refund, if you will? The president's also talking about that. Basically, a $2,000 stimulus check based on the tariffs that have been coming in. Your thought, and only for some people, not for all, for those that are up to a certain income level. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's going to happen. With what money? We're in deficit. There is no money. You can talk about the money that's coming in from tariffs, but beyond that, there's a Supreme Court decision coming, which will probably strike down much, if not most, of the tariffs that are there. There are some that Congress passed laws and said the presidents can negotiate these sorts of tariffs by themselves, but the Constitution is very clear. Only the president, I'm sorry, only Congress, not the president, only Congress can pass a tariff law or a tax increase. And that's
now
very
Grover. What they're explaining on the Republican side is there may be truth to that. They may have done it too broadly, but they say if they make them targeted tariffs in certain ways and take a different approach, that the tariffs will remain in place. Because look, this president's been able to exact a lot of results from tariffs, making deals with the UK and Canada and China, and so he needs that leverage to put America back in a position of being successful, I believe. And so they're going to take a different approach, aren't they?
Well, he used that leverage to get better deals. Now we don't need these tariffs. I mean, this is the point wasn't to raise prices for Americans on goods and services. No. It was to get better trade deals with Europe and other countries, which the president's had a great deal of success in. Once you've done that, we don't need to keep some of the higher tariffs we have.
That is
everybody. A lot of foodstuffs, those tariffs came down. So we can do both. The president got his wins, and now we need to keep prices down to deal with the affordability crisis. Because unfortunately, tariffs do increase the costs for American citizens, but he used them to win advantage for us around the world.
Yeah, overall, fairly optimistic about the economy. I am. I'm wondering what your feeling is. We just saw a record-setting Black Friday, $26+ billion spent. The prediction for Christmas is $1 trillion. And then a pretty good announcement, a couple of them here in Washington this week, savings accounts for children and reducing the CAFE standards for car makers should help out those industries. I'll give you the last word.
The deregulation of autos so that you don't have to make them out of newspapers and plastic anymore. And government should not be telling people what kind of cars to buy or what cars to build. This is a wonderful step that the president did. And this is billions and billions of dollars in lower costs for the next car you buy. It is a huge, huge deal. I share your optimism about the economy. One of the things the president's looking at doing is something he wanted to do in 2019, end the tax on inflation when you pay capital gains. So when you sell your house, you don't pay tax on that increase in the value of your house that was just inflation. Or if you sell your farm or a ranch or your small business that you created or the stocks that you own, this will be a tremendous step forward and can be done by the Treasury Secretary as a rulemaking. So it will not require Democratic votes, although many Democrats
look forward to it.
Have endorsed this.
Yeah, we got to leave it right there. Grover Norquist, always an education. Thank you for being here.
Good to be with you.